All right, so these are our non-price determinants. All right, and again, these are the things that move the demand curve. So what I'd like to do now is to set up some cases where a certain economic event has occurred, and it's your job to tell me what happens. And again, not only are you going to tell me what happens, but you're also going to tell me what happens to the model as well. All right, so we are studying, what product should we study? Shampoo? Okay. So the United States decides, or for whatever reason, the United States shampoo industry decides to get together and form a United States Shampoo Association, and you get hired to be their economist. Okay, so you're probably pulling down $300,000–$400,000 a year to do this, because let's face it, there's a lot of money in shampoo. Right? I mean, how many times do you guys have to rinse and repeat every morning? Okay, yeah, well, whatever. So the economic event that I tell you is, let's see, okay. You read that incomes in the U.S. are falling. So, and it may be that prior to that is a big, huge, long story talking about how the U.S. is now entering a new recession, and because of that recession, average incomes are falling. All right. So you guys say, okay, we're working for shampoo. Bam. Income. It's going to change the demand for our product. Is it going to make our product's demand shrink or rise? Why is it going to shrink? Okay. So, in other words, what type of a good is shampoo? Normal. Right? So, you will tell me. So we will see demand for shampoo falling, or to fall, or it will fall. All right? And you need to add there, because shampoo is a normal good. All right? Anytime you are talking about income, you need to clarify what your good is, either normal or inferior. And since we said it's normal, that means there's a direct relationship to what's happening to incomes and what's happening to our demand. So since incomes are falling, so is the demand for shampoo. It is falling. Okay? So these are the words that you should write in the model. Right, so if you want to be complete, label your model or your graph completely. So if our demand is falling, what am I going to do? Down into the other right. So we will shift the entire demand curve to the left, because that's what happens when demand shrinks. All right? Notice the way I drew my new demand curve. You must do at least one of the three things that I have done up here in order for me to know what you're doing. You either have to draw a little arrow that tells me where the line moved, or you have to draw this line dashed, which means that it's second, or you have to label it with a little prime on the top to indicate that this is the new demand curve, okay? I will almost always do all three of those things. Sometimes I may only do two of them, But the fact remains is that you, so that I know what you're doing, must do one of those, right? Because when I see these two lines, I have to know which one was first and which one was second. And if I can't tell, then you're going to start missing points, okay? So make sure that you do something so that I know which was the first demand curve and which is now the new second demand curve. All right? All right. We okay so far? Okay, cool. So, let's see. Let me try another one then. Okay, so you read that the price of hair dryers triples. All right, so again, your job when you read this economic event is to try and say, how does this new piece of news relate back to my product, shampoo? When you go to buy shampoo, what might you also buy? A hairdryer, right? At least every once in a while, because you got to have them. Because you got to dry your hair, right? I mean, you can't walk out of the house with wet hair. Your mother would kill you. So what's the relationship between shampoo and hair dryers, according to me at least? They're complementary goods. Okay, so shampoo and hair dryers are complements. Again, set the table for me. Tell me what the relationship is so that when you go to analyze this, you do it correctly. Okay? So since shampoo and hair dryers are complements, when the price of hair dryers goes up, what does our demand for shampoo do? Why? They're with each other, right? But if the price of hair dryers is going up, that means that you're going to have to pay, instead of paying, how much does a hair dryer cost? I have $20. Instead of paying $20 for a hair dryer, you have to pay $60. If you have to pay $60 for a hair dryer, you're going to start paying less for the shampoo, or you want to spend less on the shampoo. So what happens to your demand for shampoo? Goes down. Again, that's the inverse relationship, right? So since this price is going up, our demand for shampoo is going to fall. So you as a shampoo economist would say, oh boy, guys, we're going to have to start dealing with a little bit less demand. Maybe not a whole lot because this complementariness is a little shaky, but it's still there, right? So a price increase in dryers will make demand for shampoo fall. And if you want to clarify it by saying fall only a little, but still fall, that's fine, right? For all intents and purposes in this class, whether it falls a lot or falls a little or falls a medium amount, doesn't matter, okay? If we had a full semester of microeconomics, we would spend more time with this, but we don't have time, okay? So again, I want you to be able to model this change as well. Here's our demand curve. And in this case, our demand is falling again. So what are we going to do? We're going to shift it to the left. All right. One last example. We're still working on the shampoo market. And you read in the paper, read that the price of shampoo is falling. Now, we're not expecting it to fall. We're saying it is falling. It went down. Okay, so in fact, let's price of shampoo, literally let's make it in the past. Went down, straight up, so that there's none of this potential future thing inside of there. The participles in English are a little bit annoying. This is past, all right? So you were the economist for the shampoo companies or the shampoo association, and you went on vacation for 2 or 3 months because that's what you get when you're a fancy economist. You get tons of vacation. This is me selling economics to all of you guys, all right? So you came back 2 or 3 months later from vacation, and you discover that for whatever reason, all the shampoo companies decided to lower their price. And you're like, what the? Oh my goodness, right? So now they want to report what happened, all right? So you say, okay. The price of shampoo went down. So when the price goes down, what happens? Be careful. The quantity demanded goes up, right? Did one of these 5 things change? Did I release ceteris paribus in this example? No. This one basically just states, when price of shampoo falls, the quantity demanded rises. Notice that it's not that demand rises, that it's the quantity demanded. In other words, people are going to buy more. That doesn't mean that necessarily that the demand went up. In this case, the only reason that they're buying more, we lowered the price. Not because of one of these 5 things. All right? And again, that's the difference between a change in demand versus a change in quantity demanded. Right? Lowering the price, again, most people will say it increases demand. Really, all it does is it increases sales. So, when you're asked to model this, remember that this is not a change in demand, it's a change in quantity demanded. So you do not draw a new curve. All you do is move from one point to a new point, and you can pick any point you want to start at. Pick your favorite one. That's the nice part about having an infinite number of points. And you know that the price was going down. We move to this new point. Here's where the price went down. This is the decrease in price. That is the increase in quantity. All right? So this is your decrease in price and the corresponding increase in quantity. All right, this is a very, very classic, tricky type question to ask in an economics quiz/test. Is instead of changing a non-price determinant, just change the price, right? So don't let me trick you on that one, all right? All right. You guys can do this? Yeah? All right. So one more, and then we'll move on to supply. Remember that we're This is the United States Shampoo Association, right? The USSA. So you read that the U.S. Conquers Canada. Well, come on, it's Canada, right? All we decided to do was to drive a car across the border and say, we claim this in the U.S., and they say, okay, because they're Canadians, right? What do they care? True, at the end of it. That's fine with us, eh? All right, so we are working in the shampoo industry. All of a sudden now, and again, we were the U.S. Shampoo Association, so all we were worried about were United States citizens buying our shampoo. All that exporting crap, that's like, ooh, that's scary. We don't do that, all right? But now we have conquered Canada. So we have grown. How does that relate to the shampoo industry? Yeah, or the U.S. is bigger. So what happened? The number of buyers increased, right? Because now there's more Americans, right? We went over and we took away their red passports and we gave them blue ones, and now they're American. Woohoo! I mean, it's not like they're going to change anything. They're still going to be out there hugging the trees, kissing the moose, and drinking beer. And, you know, great friend in Canada. He lived with me for a summer, one summer while I worked at Los Alamos National Lab, and when I went back to school the next fall, I said A at the end of all of my students are looking at me going, why do you keep saying A? Why? What? Are you going to like start singing the alphabet to us? And I was like, what A? Just, it was funny. Anyways, so in our world, we're going to say, the number of buyers of shampoo increases. Because, again, remember, we work for the shampoo industry. All we care about is what's happening in the shampoo industry. We ignored all the other crap that went on, right? Because there had to be at least a little bit of a war. That would be a compliment, yeah. I could have done that with, instead of hair dryers. Number of buyers of shampoo increases, so our demand increases as well. Because, of course, number of buyers increases our demand, and we will graph, or modellically, if that's a word, modellifically. Here's our, now it's going to increase, so we shift it to the right. And here's our new demand curve. All right. Again, you're probably looking at this going, okay, this is all well and good, but, you know, so what? What does this mean? Well, bear with me. We have to get to supply before it to actually mean something. All right? Okay? So, we are now done with demand. Non-price determinants of demand. I'm going to keep those up there because guess what there's going to be?
Non-price determinants of supply.
Deep, yes. We will have non-price determinants of supply as well. Okay, so supply. Now, the problem with supply is that you have to somehow be able to take your brain out of buyer mode, right? Quit being a buyer of products. You don't buy anything anymore. So basically pull that top of your head off, take your brain, turn it around, wash it with some soapy water, because anytime you pull your head, and then put it back on, and you will start to think like a supplier, all right? Imagine doing that to yourself, and we will move forward, all right? Demand, there was an inverse relationship between price and quantity, because when you go to buy stuff, if the price goes up, you buy less. We are now sellers. When you're selling a good, if the price of that good is rising, what do you want to do as a seller? You want to sell more, right? Because then you make more money, right? So whenever you see the price of your product going up, you're doing a little happy dance, right? You're like, yeah, whatever. You're happy because you know you're going to start making more money. So the definition or the law of supply is that there is a direct relationship between the price of a good and the quantity supplied of a good in a time period and since this is a theory, what do I end it with? Ceteris paribus. So if nothing else changes, when the price goes up, you as a supplier, you will crank out more supply. You will produce more of that particular good because you'll be able to sell it for a higher price and you will make more money. And again, realize that in the microeconomic side of the world, all we give a shit about is money, period. Okay? So for all of you that have like wonderfully good, nice feelings about the world and you're altruistic and you want to help people, you need to squash that part of yourself. For the first half of this class, you must become the asshole that you are. All of you have it. I know it might be tough to get there, but you can do it, I swear. If you can do that, you will do better in this class because you cannot care about people. All you care about is the almighty God dollar, okay? Because that's all we want. In the micro side of the world, we're capitalists, right? Capitalism says if you can make $5 by killing your neighbor and you can get away with it, you do it. The caveat, of course, is getting away with it, right? I mean, you know. But that's capitalism, right? I mean, that's the whole point, right? If you can climb up the ladder and you do it by stepping on people's heads, well, I hope they've got a footrest, right? You're all good to go. So, again, we are suppliers. Now, I know what you're thinking in the back of your heads. You're thinking, wait a second. When the price goes up and the supplier cranks out more goods, what happens? Well, the price is going to start going back down, right? Because they're going to flood the market. Nothing else is changing, right? So if you flood the market, the price is not going to fall because you're not allowing it to. I won't let it. I have fixed ceteris paribus. That's not going to happen, all right? So, I know you want to think that because we all do. Just convince yourself not to. All right, again, one of the harder parts of this class is to contain yourself into the economic box that I'm building for you. Right? Normally you're told to think outside the box in most of your social science classes. Not in this one. In this one, what I want you to do is build the box and then sit inside of it and go, okay, this is my world. It's contained in this little box, and I'm not going to get outside of it. And if you do that, you actually will do better in this class, all right? Because a lot of times we look at the economy and we think we know what's going to happen, but there's so many different variables that you're trying to take into account with all at the same time. We're only ever going to let one thing change at a time. That's not real, okay? So getting outside of the box and seeing one thing change, that's silly, okay? That never happens in the real world. So literally, we're going to sit inside of a box and open up enough room so that one thing can come through. And that's what we're going to do, is say, how do we analyze from that perspective? Yes, that is a little non-realistic, right? But the idea is that the theory behind it is solid. And as you start to take all of those pieces and let them potentially be the real world, you have a slightly better picture of it, okay? So bear in mind that while I tell you to force yourself into a box, that's not really what I'm wanting you to do. I'm just saying that it will make doing the problems and properly answering the questions easier to handle, okay? Because we're really talking about very short time frames normally, all right? All right, so what does a direct relationship line look like, or model look like? it's up and to the right instead of down and to the right. And since this is supply, instead of labeling it with a D, I label it with an S. This is your supply model. All right, so we had the difference between a change in the demand and the change in quantity demanded. Guess what? You're going to have the same thing for supply, and all of the exact same verbiage stays exactly the same. All right? A change in quantity supplied will come from a change in the price of the good that you are working with. Okay, so it's only the good that you're talking about's price. If that changes, your quantity supplied will change. Now, please realize that it will change in a direct fashion. So if the price goes up, we as suppliers will supply more because they're going together. If the price goes down, we as suppliers will produce less. Okay? And again, that's just a matter of saying, if we're on this point, so if the price is here right now, this is how much we would produce. If the price goes down, so the price falls to here, our quantity falls in a similar fashion. Okay? That's how direct relationships work. Things move together. Okay? All right, so ceteris paribus active. And remember that graphically, we just move to a new point, all right? And that's exactly the same as demand, except that our motion along the line is now in a direct relationship instead of in an inverse relationship. A change in supply, then, actually supply changing, comes from one of those changes in a non-price determinant of supply. And again, before that thing has to change, you have to say release ceteris paribus, right? And likewise, graphically, you move the entire line. And again, these descriptions are exactly the same as demand. So from that perspective, it's kind of nice, right? We're at least consistent. All right, so here are non-price determinants of demand. Now we need non-price determinants of supply. Number of buyers. For the demand side, guess what the first one is for supply? Again, remember that the difference between demand and supply, demand is from the buyer perspective, hence number of buyers. Supply is from the producer or the seller side of it, so number of sellers. And again, it is this change in supply is a direct sort of thing, right? If there's more suppliers, then your supply will increase and shift to the right. If there are less suppliers, then there will be less supply, and your curve will shift to the left. All right, the second thing that will change your supply is technology. This one's it's a little bit slightly weird, but hopefully you guys can agree with me on it. Will technology ever decrease your supply? Will you ever invent someone so that you produce less? I mean, your invention, you're going to create a new invention, a new piece of technology. Will it make what you're doing harder to do? I mean, when you invent new technology, what is your goal? Make it easier to do, right? So the whole point of technology is to increase your supply, period, okay? If you read that there's new technology, please do not ever tell me that supply decreased, because that would be silly. If that's the case, then you should have invented that piece of technology, or at least you shouldn't have used it, okay? So, I mean, you might want to try and hide it in like Microsoft type phrases where you should buy Microsoft 8 because eventually it will make your work better, right? Even though initially it will really suck. And anytime you've had to deal with a new release of Microsoft, you always know that your productivity goes down. But in theory, in the future, it will make up for the. And we always buy it, right? Fucking Microsoft. All right. All right. So let's see. Oh yeah. I want to try and put them in the same order as the book. I probably am wrong, but is this next one? All right, cool. Resource prices. Now, when you are building something, when you are making something, you need to have resources. What are the resources you may have? Land, labor, capital. Okay? Please realize that all three of in theory for us to be able to produce anything. All right? So when I tell you that the price of land is doubling in the city of Janesville, every company in the city of Janesville is going to see their resources costs rise. Right? If the value of your property goes up, what do you have to do at the end of the year? Pay higher property taxes, right? If you're not selling your land, having the land be worth more actually sucks. Having dealt with that up in Madison where the tax rate is extremely high, I keep trying to damage my house so that the assessor will come by and say, oh, that house looks worse. I'll be like, yeah. So I neighbor had an old Chevy truck, 1965 one. I was going to put it up in my front yard and put it on blocks and just leave it there for a year or two.
The grass grow all over it.
See if that, darn neighborhood associations. All right. Anyways, please realize that when any of these prices go up, again, now think about it, right? If the costs go up for a business, are they going to produce more or less? Less, right? If it costs them more to buy land or to pay for their land, that means they can't buy as many raw materials, right? Therefore, they have to produce less. Likewise, if their labor force gets a pay raise, are they going to increase production because they pay their workers more? The exact opposite happens. They actually produce less because now it costs them more to make stuff, right? These are very, very important things, right? Lots of people think, well, this country would just be fine if the companies would go out and hire everybody. It's like, well, yeah, but if the companies went out and hired everybody, they wouldn't produce as much. Exactly. So bear in mind, though, that these are their resources. So when I start talking, it's labor, right? Nowhere over here do I talk about a set of workers getting paid more or less, right? You may try and talk about it in terms of income, But please remember, this is the income of the entire country or the entire economy, not one niche of it, right? So if I say that orange pickers in Florida formed a union, are now getting paid more, I'm not telling you that everyone's income is going up. All I'm telling you is that the labor for picking oranges is costing more, all right? That's sometimes difficult for students to differentiate, right? Because they see, well, these people are getting paid more. That means they're getting more income. But this really describes everyone, right? Not just one set, okay? All right, and again, when those resource costs go up, our supply is going down, right? They're moving in opposite directions. This is one of those things that has an inverse relationship. So if you see higher prices for these, lower demand. If you see these things become cheaper, right, supply will go up, right? Number 4 is cool because it's the same. But again now, remember, what are you on this side of the world? You're a seller. What are you on this side of the world? A buyer. So you have to have your brain, right? If you as a seller think that the price is going to go up in the future, are you going to try and sell more now or sell more later? Later. So you're actually going to sell now less. You actually reduce your availability of product when you expect the price to go up in the future. So you're holding out, right? And that's what a lot of our businesses are doing right now, right? They're sitting out there going, well, until I see people buying more, I'm not going to produce more. They may expect it, but expecting it doesn't mean anything. When they expect the price to go up, they wait. And then when the price does go up, that's when they shift. Okay? So, if they expect the price to go down, yeah, they're trying to sell now. They're going to crank out as much as they can right now so that they can sell it right now and get it while the price is still higher. All right? So when they expect the price to go down, they actually supply more. When they expect, they actually supply less right now. Again, it's an inverse relationship on the seller side. It's a direct relationship on the buyers. Almost always, suppliers and demanders, right? The brain is reversed. I'm only going to do 5 of them. Technically, the book has 6. Please ignore the 6th one. I don't like it. What? I could make you do a 6th one, but then you'd have to remember 6 and 5, and that's annoying. 5 and 5, that's nice, that's consistent, it's mathematical. So the last thing that affects suppliers are taxes and subsidies. What's the difference between the two? Right. Taxes are a charge, subsidies are a present. Right? When you are subsidized to produce something, the government actually pays you to produce it. When you're taxed for something, you have to pay the government to produce it. Right? So these things are, by definition, the exact opposite of each other. So, taxes. If your taxes go up as a supplier, right? So suppose we're going to make shampoo, and the government comes along and says that you used to have to pay 1% of the value of your shampoo in taxes, and they say we're going to double it, now you're going to have to pay 2%. You are a supplier of shampoo. Are you going to supply more shampoo or less? Less, because now for every ounce of shampoo you make, instead of only having to pay 1%, you have to pay 2%. Costs you more. Taxes are like a resource. You have to pay them when you produce it, right? So this, when you have more taxes, you will supply less. Likewise, when you reduce taxes, what will businesses supposedly do? They will increase their supply. And again, this is why people are saying, well, if the government would just quit taxing all of our businesses, they would increase their supply. And in order for a business to increase supply, what do they have to do? Hire people, hopefully, right? The hard part is when a business goes to produce more, do they hire people initially right away? Nah, they look at the current workforce and say, how about a 60-hour week instead of a 50-hour week? And of course, you guys all just went through a recession, so you're like, okay. This one forces you to supply less. Subsidies, on the other hand, if the government pays you to produce, are you going to produce more if they pay you to produce it? Duh. Right? So realize that subsidies are a direct relationship. Again, more subsidies mean more supply, less subsidies mean less supply. And again, realize that most of the large businesses in this country are being subsidized by our government. Period. Right? The two biggest products that the government subsidizes, gasoline, farmers. Two biggest ones. Who are the two richest groups of people at the moment, right now? Yeah. My darn cousin right now is rolling in it. All right, so we can do similar things with supply that we did with demand just a second ago, right? So what I want to do is set up a series of economic events, and you tell me what happens to supply. All right? What product should we sell this time? Before we were shampoo buyers, now we're shampoo sellers, in theory. But instead of shampoo, what would you guys want to work with this time? Is it coming out? Oh, yeah. Just shift left. Good move. I mean, you see how this ceiling tile right here is bowing out? Don't think about that. It's best, yeah, well, anyways. Enough said. I will get a bucket. So, what are we going to sell? What are we going to make? Not shampoo again. That's cheese. Oh, good one. This is Wisconsin. Okay. So there's definitely a Wisconsin Cheese Association, the WCA. You don't think there is one? There is. Don't Google it, though. All right. Anyways, we are cheese makers. All right. So you read that a new machine can produce cheese 25% faster. So you, being the supply side Wisconsin Cheesemakers Association economist, what will happen to supply because of this? Exactly. So here you would say the words that you would respond with. Our response is due to new technology, supply will increase. And you will learn quickly how to come up with lots of different synonyms for the word increase or grow or, expand or whatever, right? Because you want to use a different word every time. And you will do this 10, 11. Yeah, ceteris paribus here, we released it by saying this, right? So if I were to if I were to model this, again, since we're on the supply side, please make sure you draw me a supply curve instead of a demand curve, right? Supply is going up and to the right. And Note what happens when the supply curve increases, right? We're shifting it to the right. A lot of students have problems with this because what does it look like? Is this supply line above or below this other supply line? It looks like it's below, but yeah, it's really an increase. That's why I try to get you to focus on right and left and not above and below. It works on the demand side, but it does not on the supply side, right? But if you always think right or left instead of up or down, much better, okay? We're okay with this one? All right. So let's see. Let's see. So this time, so you read that the price of milk cows doubles. Why?
Because it's already happened, milk cows doubles, you can't afford to produce that much.
True. So what happened?
Your resources.
Your resource prices went up, and since this has an inverse relationship with the supply, what happens to our supply? It goes down. All right? So our response, due to resource costs increasing, and again, it's not even a direct thing here, right? I didn't say that milk's price was necessarily going up. It was a milk cow, right? So that's maybe a slightly removed thing, but it's still one of those resources that you have to have, right? Supply of cheese falls. And again, make sure you give me the model. And this time our supply is decreasing, so we're going to shift it to the left. And here is our new supply curve. All right, none of you are crying. That's a good sign. Usually at this stage, there's certain people who are so averse to seeing graphical displays of things that they're gnashing their teeth, pulling their hair, and cursing the very ground I want. I'm assuming it's because I'm using the word model instead of graph. All right, so one more, and you guys should expect this one. Again, remember you're an economist, so you get 3 months of vacation, every $1 million or more. So you went on a 3-month vacation, you toured Europe and probably wound up in Asia for a little while, forgot your name for a week or two, but then you came back. And you discover that that the price of cheese rose 10%. This is very similar to a demand example we did. So again, you're a supplier. You're trying to talk about supply. If the price goes up, what do suppliers do? Right, they get the happy dance going. Because you're getting rich. That's their goal. Right? But remember that it's the actual good we're selling that went up. Very good. All right, so due to price rising, the quantity supplied will increase. And again, remember, we're suppliers, so higher prices means produce more. Lower prices means produce less. It's very important that you say that it's the quantity supplied that is increasing. Think of an increase in supply as a supplier building new machinery to increase their production. Whereas an increase in quantity supplied is just them saying, oh, we had some extra cheese in our warehouse. Normally we would save it before we push it out into the market. Now we don't. Whew. Send it out there and sell it faster. Okay? And again, the graphical interpretation of this no change in ceteris paribus. We didn't have any of these things change, so it's not a new curve. All we did was move from this price to a higher price. So here was our increase in price. And due to our increase in price, or because of the increase in price, we as suppliers increased our supply, or our quantity supplied. All righty. Whew. That's a heavy load. This is the meat and potatoes, folks, right? When we start working with real economic situations from now on, your goal is to see, when you read an economic event, where does it fall? And part of your goal is to see, who is it affecting? Is it affecting the buyers? Or is it affecting the sellers? Okay? And if it's affecting the buyers, you will only change demand. If it is affecting the sellers, you will only change supply. All right? And really what we're trying to do, and essentially I have now shown you the box. The box is these 5 things on the building side and these 5 things on the buying side. Okay? And our goal is to take everything that we read economically and say, where does it fit? As best as we can. Okay? Now, before we get to doing examples like that, we need to figure out what happens when you take supply and mix it with your demand. Right? This is kind of like the Reese's peanut butter commercial, right? Your chocolate is in my peanut butter. You got what? You guys don't know that one? So the idea is that when you take a demand curve that is always going down and to the right and put it in the same quadrant with a supply curve, which is always going up and to the right, what will those 2 lines always do? Oh my God. Right? The nice part about the fact that demand always goes down to the right and supply going up and to the right is that they're always going to hit eventually. Okay? And where they hit this intersection, and all of you that said that, you cannot say that you hate math ever again. Exactly. This magic point is equilibrium, and it usually, after you see and find equilibrium, you will hear this magic tone all of a sudden, happen. It will be, oh. And if you see a little halo and a little angel wings show up on my shoulders, it's cool. Don't worry about it. It's very natural, okay? Because equilibrium does that to you. All right. If it really does, then shh. Okay, so the idea is that where supply and demand intersect, at this point, this is often called the equilibrium price. And hence you call it the price with a subscript E, because what does E stand for? Anytime you say equilibrium, what do you got to do afterwards? Oh.
You got your head.
So if there's an equilibrium price, guess what? There is an equilibrium quantity as well. And this magic point, equilibrium, is where supply and demand will magically not change if you ever get there. The idea is that if you can get the price to be at equilibrium, and you will produce, the suppliers will produce exactly as much as the demanders will buy. In other words, there will be no inventory changes. Wouldn't that be wonderful, right? I mean, that's the goal of every business, right? Why would a business ever want to keep inventory? What do they have to do if you have inventory as a business? You got to pay to store it, right? Well, that's wasting money. Right? The goal of our business is to maximize our profit. If we're spending money to store a product somewhere, we are not maximizing our profit. A business's goal is actually to reach this equilibrium at all times so that they can have no inventory ever. And what most businesses have been doing in order to cut costs, right? The number one cost to a business is almost always labor. So the first thing you cut is labor. You fire people. I mean, that's what they did first. What they did second was they said, okay, the second thing that we have to spend most money on is storing product, right? If we can make it right when someone wants it, golden, right? So what a lot of businesses have tried to do is to take their model of production, instead of producing and then figuring out where they need to send it to sell it, it's to say, oh, I'm not going to produce it until I am going to sell it. So they wait for the demand to come in before they even bother to produce. We'll talk a little bit more about that later. But equilibrium is our goal. Now, this is our equilibrium price. Market price is what the price of the good really is out there in the market, right? My question to you is, how often is the market price the same as the equilibrium price? Never. All right? The reason why it's never, right, is that this equilibrium will continue to be equilibrium as long as ceteris paribus is on. If there are no shifts in supply and demand, this will always be our equilibrium price. How often can we force supply and demand not to shift? Exactly. Then you would be in communism. Then it would all be better, or whatever. Anyways, the idea is that the market price is very rarely, if ever, the same as the equilibrium price. So that means that the market price has to be higher or lower than the equilibrium price. Right? Well, what happens when the market price is higher or lower than the equilibrium? Well, maybe. All right, so let's look at the two cases, right? So market price is the price of our good in the market. Hence the term market price. It's kind of a circular definition, but bear with me. Equilibrium price is the price where supply and demand, there isn't an E in there, so scratch that out, intersect. We would like those two to be the same. Very rarely are they not. All right? So case one, market price is greater than our equilibrium price. And this is my abbreviation for equilibrium price, because otherwise I'll misspell it. All right, so So let's look at a model where the market price is greater than the equilibrium price. First of all, get in the habit of, one, making sure you always do price and quantity, and two, that you always label your supply and demand correctly. This class gets very, very, very confusing if all of a sudden this line becomes demand and this line becomes supply. Seriously, it will really suck. So don't do that. Okay? All right. So here's our equilibrium price. We're saying the market price is somewhere up here, right? So this is our market price. How much are people buying? Well, based on this price, how do I figure out where people are buying? Well, where is the market price dictating how much people buy? What drives buying? Demand. So at this price, here's our demand curve. Here's where we're hitting our demand curve. At this price, this is how much our buyers will buy, right? So if this is how much they're going to buy, guess what I want to look at next? I want to look at supply. How much are the sellers producing, right? The sellers are saying, ooh, look at this market price. It's kind of nice right now. We like it. So they're pushing product out there, all right? So to see how much is being supplied, you take that same price and see where is it going to hit supply. Notice that it does not hit supply at the same point. There's only one, oh, and that's where those two things are the same. If you're not there, they got to be different. Okay? So here, this is our quantity supplied. So what's happening in this market? We have more supply than demand. So what are sellers having to do? Well, look, they're not going to make sales right away. Businesses never want to lower price, ever. Okay? Because that's going to cut into our profit. And remember, all we ever care about is profit. We're going to get there, but initially, the price is where it's at. Saying, okay, we're great. Unfortunately, we're not selling all that we produce. So what do we have to do when we're not selling everything that we're producing? Storage. So we probably had a warehouse, or we have room in our factory where we can store some goods. But as long as the price stays up here, though, what's happening? We're not going to sell it. We're just going to keep storing more and 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 more. And eventually, what are we going to have to do to get rid of the extra inventory? We got to lower the price. Okay? So the idea here is that when the market price is greater than the equilibrium price, we aren't selling all of our product. In order to sell it, we must have a sale. In order to sell, we must have a sale. And in other words, we have to lower the price. And notice, where does the price head towards? And this is why equilibrium sings to you, because the price always gets pulled towards it. It's like a lodestone, right? It's like a magnet with metal filings, right? Your price, when it shifts, it's always going to shift towards equilibrium. But the reason why is based in good, hard, solid facts. When the price is too high, you're going to have increasing inventories. If the inventories increase enough, businesses are going to lower the price. because they have to get rid of their inventory eventually, right? Even if it's a frickin' car, eventually they have to have a price drop, okay? All right, so that's if the market price is greater than equilibrium. Well, let's shift ourselves a little bit, get another fresh supply and demand curve going on here. Case 2 is now market price is below equilibrium. So now, here is our new market price, below equilibrium. We do the exact same thing to see what's going to happen. All right? Again, this time, though, which curve do we hit first?
Supply.
We're going to hit supply first, right? So this is our quantity supplied. At this price, this is how much our buyers are buying. What's happening under this situation?
Supply is low, but demand is high.
Supply is low, the demand is high. So when you go to the store to buy this product, what happens half the time you go to the store to buy this product? There's none there. Does that mean that the store is going to keep selling that product at the same price? Now, I had a student one year argue, wait a second. If the price is too low, you're always selling all of your goods. Isn't that exactly what you want? Right? Well, I mean, but let's suppose they're still making money at this price, right?
But if there's no someone's trying to buy it, you're not making money either.
You're not making up money off of those people showing up. And in addition, are those people that go in there to buy that one product going to buy anything else in your store? No. And what's your competition going to do? Well, they're going to sell this product, but where are they going to get their supply? They're going to get it from you. If you're selling it real low, right? So imagine, if you will, that you go into Walgreens and they're selling bottles of ice cold water for 25 cents, and it's the big, nice, real kind, whatever you consider real, and you know that that's a really low price. What might you do? You might buy the entire stock out and then go outside of Walgreens and say, bottled water, 50 cents a bottle. Right? But Walmart was still Walgreens was still making, like maybe 1 penny per bottle, right? Are they going to charge 25 cents the next time they stock that thing full of water? No, all right? So the idea here is that lack of inventory will make the price rise. And again, just like we saw before, where's the price heading towards? When you wake up to that tone going off in your head, I apologize. All right, before we move on, let me clarify what these things are. Again, when we are setting the price too high, economists say that we are generating a surplus. Surpluses always lead to the price falling. When the price is too low, this is called a shortage, and that will lead to the price going up. All right, so what makes the price change, folks, is not businesses changing the price willy-nilly. It's businesses looking at this. Whenever they're seeing a surplus of their product, they lower the price. Whenever businesses are seeing a shortage of the product, they raise the price. Those are the only two things that ever change price. Right? Businesses don't look out there and say, I'm going to make more money by raising the price. Look and say, oh my God, there's a shortage going on. That's why I raised the price, right? That's why gas prices have fallen a little bit over the last couple of months, because what have we been doing as buyers? We're not buying as much. Therefore, there's a surplus of gas. So what happens to the price of gas? Goes down. So if you can just convince everybody to quit buying gas, the price of gas, period.
But then buying it would increase it later.
Yeah, but once you get to buy it real cheap, that's all that matters. It's all about you, right? Remember, we're capitalists. If we can step on people's heads to get higher, we will. All right, that really takes us to the end of chapter 3, which is nice. Homework. Somebody validate that pages 69 and 70 are the correct pages for the homework. 2, 4, 6, and 8. Please put a star next to number 6. There are lots of parts to it. A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I. There are like 9 or 10 parts to that. The idea in question 6 is that you're actually trying to say what's happening to either supply or demand. All right, on number 6, do not tell me that both supply and demand change. Only one of them can change, okay? So for these 8 or 9 parts to this question, number 6, it's either supply or demand, one or the other, and then either rises or falls, one or the other, and that's it. Nothing more, nothing less. Right? So don't tell me that demand rises and supply falls. No. Okay? Only one thing is going to change. And your goal is basically to look at the economic event and see where does it fit into either the non-price determinants of demand or the non-price determinants of supply. And again, remember that suppliers are sellers, demanders are buyers. Okay, so if they specifically say something about buyers, don't tell me that supply changed. Likewise, if they say something about a business, don't tell me that demand is changing because they're talking about supply. All right. Sorry. Keeping you a little long. And again, please remember that you have Monday off. Did you turn me off, Joe? Thanks.